Live.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Chain Chatter, episode 3. We have They Call Me Dan from Speak Network, formerly 3Speak, still 3Speak, but with a lot of future. And we have Matt from Splinterlands. And obviously, we have Carl, our host, founder of Leo Finance. So the first thing I would like to start with is Dan, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself, not about your dApps, not about your projects, about yourself, about your founder's journey, and how did you end up to being where you are right now?
All right, hi, I'm Dan. They call me Dan on Hive. My journey, grew up pretty poor. Was pretty much a lifelong entrepreneur. Only had one job for a month, quit that, and started my entrepreneurial journey. And that's been ups and downs. And eventually I got into poker, became a professional. That put food on the table for about, the better part of a decade. A hard way to make an easy living is what they'd say about poker. I had a psychic grandma. She's no longer with us. She told me I should get into the stock market a long time ago, but I think she meant crypto. So eventually I found crypto, got into Bitcoin through poker, getting onto poker sites. And then it kind of clicked 6 months later, late 2016. And just went down the rabbit hole ever since. Fell in love with the technology behind Hive ever since I found out about it. And around my birthday in 2017, I realized then just a fraction of the potential, and I was super excited then. And I see it and understand it a lot more now, and my enthusiasm's only grown. So,
yeah, I do remember that you kicked me out of a live poker tournament. So yeah,
I would
Matt,
apologize, but
yeah, Matt, what about you? Tell us a little bit about yourself, please, for the audience.
Yeah, I mean, it's not all that different from Dan, although I was just more of a tech nerd, gamer, computer programmer. So I found out about Bitcoin early on, but it took me many years to really get it and why it was so important. So I didn't get that involved, right when I first found out about it. But it took like kind of years of learning and understanding. And then at the same time, roughly in 2017. Got into Hive, and I mean, I was looking at a whole bunch. There weren't that many blockchains and platforms at that time, but I was looking into all of them, and Hive, by far was the most interesting. Right, it was the one you could interact with and use, and it taught me a lot of what I know about Bitcoin and other crypto. So yeah, I also fell in love with it, and that's kind of been my focus ever since.
Awesome. Yeah, this is just for the audience to get get to know you a little bit more before we actually start the roundtable. Carl, you're a Web3 founder with several small dApps under the umbrella of Leo Finance. You have DeFi, you have a blogging platform, you started a bridge. So there's so many things under the Leo Finance umbrella. So to begin with the roundtable, how do you translate Leo Finance as a Web3 ecosystem into being part of a bigger blockchain of a bigger ecosystem? And how do you manage to create synergy among the Hive blockchain and your dApps? And I'm going full into Hive because the 3 founders that we have today have projects based on the Hive blockchain. Carl, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think the cool thing about Hive is that once you really dive deep on it, kind of like Matt was saying, you just realize that it's so much better than really any other blockchain out there. Especially back then, but even still today, it's one of the few blockchains where you can actually be active and do a lot of stuff versus other blockchains where you just kind of sit there and watch numbers go up or something. This is one of the few chains where you can actually be active. You can, play to earn, you can upload videos, you can, stack Hive by blogging. It's a super cool place. So I've always said that I believe in this kind of chain agnostic future where it becomes seamless to move between blockchains. And, if you look at the internet and applications on the internet, that's kind of the status that we're at now, where if you want to use Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, you just kind of seamlessly move between those apps. And then there's like this base layer beneath it. So that's where I think blockchain is headed in general. And I think Hive's technology is just vastly superior than other blockchains in terms of allowing apps like for example, Splinterlands being, the ultimate example of this, where they can store, tens of thousands of transactions per day, at low to no cost, and use it as a base layer, but then still operate in a way where other chains can be involved, capital can flow seamlessly, and players can move seamlessly. So I've always kind of believed in that future. So I think any DApp going forward is really going to be pushing kind of this seamless integration of potentially one blockchain as kind of the core, kind of like Splinterlands does, and then other blockchains as being like, on ramps and off ramps in and out.
Yeah, and it's just as Carl says, it's all about the best layer. So Matt, I have a question for you. When Splinterlands began, it began just as a simple gaming DApp, like very rudimentary in one chain, and now you are the top one game in the whole crypto space. How did you leverage the Hive user base, and how are you managing the huge user base that you have right now? And probably Hive is just a small fraction of that.
Yeah, first I want to correct Cal. It's not tens of thousands of transactions, it's millions of transactions a day on Hive, which is just from Splinterlands and not even scratching the surface of what Hive can do.
Love that.
It's really impressive. Yes, as far as managing the user base, I mean, even though it might be one of the largest as far as blockchain Web3 crypto games go, it's still pretty small in the grand scheme of things. So Hive handles it no problem. We're able to handle it with our servers and our infrastructure, because again, like in the scheme of things, it's still pretty small. So what we really focus on is how we can grow 10x or 100x even from here, and make sure all the infrastructure from Hive and everything else can support it, which I believe it can.
Yeah, and as just like Matt says, we are not even scratching what Hive can really achieve. And I think that Dan, you are already building a side chain from Hive, but it will be, as far as I understand it, it will be interconnected to Hive, and you're pretty much going to leverage the Hive user base to grow. And I think it's called Dialogues, right? But maybe you want to tell us a little bit more about how do you plan to leverage the Hive user base for this new blockchain?
Yeah, okay, I'll give just a TLDR about the Speak network. Basically, 3Speak, it's an application. It's lived on Hive for a long time. It's a video application. We're fully on IPFS. You can download, you can seed, you can back up. So in theory, right, it's 100% decentralized, completely decentralized. In practice, it's centralized, right? Because no incentives. People aren't going to store videos for free. So we look at Hive as a very awesome micro payment incentive machine, which you can't do on high fee layer one blockchains. So the idea here is, as resource credits become more demanding, you're going to want to post your LOL comments, right? Your comments that don't need to be immutable, they don't need to last forever, off chain, because in theory, off chain, it's much bigger, endless. It's going to be cheaper as the need for a table of truth, Hive, a immutable database grows. So as we were going about this journey, we realized that there were certain needs that we needed to do. We wanted to experiment, and that's sort of where we came across Deluxe. Deluxe is it's a side chain to Hive. the technology behind Deluxe is now called Honeycomb. It's sort of this new technology that sort of came at the same time as the Speak Network. We saw a need. We worked with a great hiver called Disregard Fiat, and together he created Honeycomb, which sort of filled the needs for the Speak Network, but it also can be used with an open mind for a lot of other things. So the real terminology should be Honeycomb. That's basically Honeycomb nodes. And there's a lot that, there's a lot you can do with these things. And I think one of the cool ways is to create sort of a side chain where people can plant a flower and you have a node of honeycomb nodes, right? Like a beehive, and they kind of want to go to your flower if you incentivize them, right? So it kind of detaches the apps from the need to bring their own nodes. They might not have validators, or because Splinterland's one of the reasons I actually got into the Hive way back in the day. I watched their original interview. I think it was with Andrarchy. Really opened my eyes to what this technology could do, and they've only over delivered, exceeded all expectations, and continue to do so. But they also showed you the need that, if you have a very high performant game, you're going to want a validator system. You're going to want to have, you don't want to really be on Ethereum or it's not technically true a socialized layer one, but you really need to have your own, your own center. And I think as these apps grow, they're going to basically become their own side chains, where you rely on Hive for the important stuff, but then when you want to run smart contracts, you can have your smart contract nodes. And Hive is still experimenting with that, where everyone's doing layer 1 smart contracts. Hive decided to do layer 2 smart contracts. So that's basically supposed to be a TLDR, but a little bit about the Speak Network.
Yeah, and it's just like you say, it's just all about adapting, evolving, and transforming. Obviously, 3Speak, when it was born, the Hive blockchain and the crypto space is not the same anymore. So it's definitely a game, very fast-paced, changing game. So Matt, as a founder, how do you realize that Splinterlands was a good idea, and how long did it take you and your co-founder Agrod to form the concept? And also, how often do you revise the roadmap to modify it or to adapt to the current situation in the crypto space?
I knew it was a good idea immediately, just because it was more that I was like, if this type of product existed, I would put an irresponsible amount of money into it myself as a gamer, right, and a crypto enthusiast. And I know there's a lot of people. Yeah, I mean, it came from Magic the Gathering, right? The trading card game, Hearthstone, all that stuff. I mean, I've been playing these my whole life, and so this opportunity, I was like, this would just be amazing. I knew there was a ton of people like me, right? There's a huge overlap between gamers and crypto enthusiasts. I mean, a lot of people don't know that Mt. Gox stands for Magic the Gathering Online Exchange. So I was like, well, if I would love this product and put a bunch of money and time into it, I know there's a bunch of nerds out there like me who would too. And I've been, my whole life a game developer and a gamer, and tried to make my own games. And, I was never able to break out, because the gaming industry is a hugely competitive market traditionally. And I felt like this was it. This was my opportunity. This was sort of like what my whole life was working up to build this thing. And Agrod was pretty much the same way. So that kind of worked very well together. And then as far as changing it and updating it, I mean, that's a constant thing, right? Because it's been 4.5 years, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. But it's just been a learning experience, right? This type of thing has never really been done before, at least in this type of way. So we're figuring it out as we go. And for some people that might sound bad or be a bad thing, but it's for most of our players and ourselves, we look at that as a fantastic thing, because if you wait to get in until we figured it all out, it's going to be kind of very late in the game, right? So part of it is that all our users, all our players are on this journey with us, and everyone's working together to figure out how to do this the best way. And we look at all the other projects in the space, and see, what they've done well, what they haven't done well, and how can we incorporate that. We're doing a lot of the stuff that Dan just talked about, same as 3Speak. We're basically building out our second layer, which are going to be called validator nodes. for all the same reasons that Dan just discussed. And that's all going to be open source software also. So our hope is that, other projects totally unrelated to Splinterlands may adapt that software for their own things on top of Hive. And so we're pretty excited about that.
Yeah, it is just like Carl likes to say, just build an MVP and launch it, and then just keep building and keep evolving that with the community's feedback. So that really takes me to one question for you, Carl. Regarding adapting and evolving, when is it time to double down? When is it time to take it slow? As a founder, how do you determine when it's time to put things in the back burner? How do you manage the whole project?
Yeah, it's like Matt was saying, it's kind of crazy because you get some people who really understand that, especially when you're building with technology like this, that things are not going to be easy. They're not going to be fun in the beginning, or they'll be fun, but there's bound to be chaos. It's pretty much guaranteed. So if you build a community of the right people who believe in the long-term mission, then those speed bumps along the way are learning opportunities to build something better. So with your question, it's like you have to recognize what is a speed bump and what is a piece of trash, basically. Whereas like if something fits your long-term vision, then I think it's worth going through the iterations to figure out how to make it work. So when you put something on the back burner, I think the determination that you make is that it no longer fits with your long-term vision, or potentially that there's something else that you've discovered that is better serving your long-term vision than what you've been working on. So when it comes to various aspects of whatever you're building, I think you kind of always have to go back to the drawing board and ask yourself that base principle question of, is this fulfilling my vision, and is this the best way to fulfill that vision, or is there something that is potentially better that's out there?
Yeah, and I do like what you mentioned about the drawing board, and I think this leads to my next question. Dan, you made first 3Speak, and now you took 3Speak, and then you took Dialogues, and you kind of merged these two ideas to create the Speak network. So you have this as a long-term vision. How do you envision not the Speak network, but your overall, like, let's just say 10 to 15 years roadmap for Dan, considering that you have three dApps already under your under you?
15-year roadmap. It's nice to look up every once in a while in the distance and see the mountain that you're traveling to. I'm a real day-by-day person. Things are very volatile. If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. So it's always nice to have a plan, but what I like to do is work on myself to the point where I can handle the worst case scenario. So now I don't have to think about that. If it happens, I'm already ready for it. Put all my focus on the day-to-day positive. For things like the Speak network, what I would love to see in 10, 15 years is I don't matter. People, they might whisper my name. I don't know, but I'm not important at all because I'm not needed to be. It runs on its own. It's its own machine. And that's really what I wish for everything I'm getting involved in. I've never, I've always worked alone, entrepreneur, doing my own thing. This is new to me. Managing projects, working with a lot of people, getting a goal that I couldn't do alone. So I needed help, having to basically thrust myself into that situation. It's been a really great learning experience. It's been very fun, awesome. Much better than working alone, I'll say that. So I would really like to see the Speak network, people being able to have a fully decentralized video community where they can be incentivized to store the infrastructure, the videos, much more than videos, but let's just say for videos for 3Speak, for example. And then have your layer 2 communities. This is what really my ultimate goal with all of Hive has always been: communities, digital communities, video, written, does not matter, short form, TikTok, whatever version you want. Make them immutable, have them have plug and play economies where they can then print their own value, and make it to where, because a lot of people are being naive and they're running and taking all the arrow. Well, they're going to take a lot of arrows without really realizing what they're doing, right? These people who are just not doing it in the right way. I think that a lot of communities can have power by forming a token via community, like you see with Hive, right? That same concept, put that on the layer 2 community aspect, where a lot of people who don't need to know about the laws, right? A lot of people don't have the legal help. They don't know the ramifications. They don't know all the loopholes. They don't know all that. They just want to start their community and not get in trouble, right? For selling like an illegal security or something. And that's what a lot of the FUD's going to be about, that scare a lot of people away from really digital sovereignty, being able to have their own digital communities where they're untouchable. Hive offers the infrastructure for that, the account system, the follower system, everything you need. Now we want to encourage infrastructure being distributed. There's a lot of ways you can do that. Earn an NFT, right? Oh, Joe over there has been storing X amount of videos for this community. He has an NFT, what you would call soulbound, what people are talking about. Perfectly doable. And Joe's going to be happy to become to have contributed and have that recognition. So it's about scooping everything on the table and making it to where we can have these immutable digital communities. So that's really, in 15 years, what I really want to see. And all of these are bits and pieces for that, because you can't just go to Z. You got to go to A, and you got to think very practically. Okay, we're going to store videos. Well, how is that going to work? How are you going to incentivize people? How are you going to do governance on layer 1 and layer 2? And so on and so forth. So you have to really start at the unsexy level, where people don't really like talking about the foundation when they're building a house. They want to talk about the windows and the color and all of this, but you have to be obsessed with the foundation, and then the rest will fall into place.
Yeah, people really tend to obsess with, users tend to obsess with the final product without seeing that it's all part of a big puzzle, and we can't really cut corners when you're trying to build a great product. And I do like what you mentioned about not being important at all, but the product is what really matters. And Matt, you're pretty much the same. You don't like the highlights. You like to build, and this roundtable is actually to know more about the founders and not about the dApps, but still interlinked. So you are the tech part of Splinterlands. How is it to run a dApp and such a big app, being one side of the coin of the founder team? How do you manage to keep building in a day-by-day basis, being just 50% of the founding team?
Why I find it to be super helpful, actually. There's already an overwhelming amount of stuff to do. With trying to run a business and an app and this type of organization. I have zero interest in handling any business type stuff. I'm only interested in how can we build the best product possible for players. So having a business partner there to take on all that other stuff that I don't want to and don't have the time to deal with has been super helpful.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think that having a team made of 2 or 3 people can have its pros, and also it could have its cons if you don't know how to create synergies and how to work with the other person. So it's very important to pick your partners. Cal, you run Leo Finance. You are the spearhead. How does running a project by yourself with a big team translates to speed in terms of development? And if you were able to pick just one side of the coin, which one would you pick, the business side or the tech side?
Yeah. I'm kind of on the flip side of Matt, where I personally, I love the business. I love the financial side of it. I've always kind of, when I was younger, I started playing with the stock market, and the financial side is always what interested me the most. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely days where I wish I had like a technical co-founder, because dealing with devs and then also dealing with business headaches and the financial part of it gets kind of overwhelming on a lot of days. And if anyone knows me and you've tried to reach out to me, there's a 99.9% chance that I don't respond, or that it takes months for me to respond. So yeah, I mean, I deal with kind of like an overwhelming influx of things to do. So, if I had to choose one, it would definitely be the business side. But I do still have, a love for the technical side. I've always, loved playing with computers and technology. So I would say my strong suit is on the business side, but the tech side is still super interesting. I think, and I've listened to a lot of different podcasts with, VCs. I find VCs to be very fascinating. And most VCs will tell you that the best companies that they've found actually, typically have two founders. So it's some sort of two founder model where you've got a highly technical person and then someone else who's great with like business marketing and sales. So that's one thing that I've seen with Splinterlands that I think that they excel at, is kind of having that duality.
Yeah, and this actually takes me to the financial side that you mentioned. And Dan, so you pretty much went like you are heavily invested on Hive, the token. You're probably the second biggest stakeholder of the whole ecosystem. So let's talk about your project assessment and how do you recognize and filter a good project or a good product? 3Speak was born from being a censorship-free platform, being an alternative to YouTube. What made you decide between competing with YouTube and not, let's say, TikTok or Instagram? So it's a double-sided question.
Yeah, well, I would say there's two different investment types. There is spotting a really good business, meaning you can look at the co-founders, you can look at the team, the tokenomics, et cetera, usually layer 2 apps, like a Splinterlands, for example, and then invest in that. And then there's another one where you're looking at like a base layer, like, Ethereum or something these apps would live on top of. When I first got into crypto, I had focused more on the applications, just because, when you first get into crypto, it's just like you're getting thrown, you have to go through it all. You have to learn about these coins, and they're all very interesting. And the ideas are very interesting. And especially when you're new, you can start to really, get a little bit scattered. What I really look for, if we're looking for investment types, why I invested in Hive, is because I think that censorship resistance is in the digital layer is going to be highly valuable. Obviously, none of this is financial advice, but that's where I see my edge, because I learned very quickly in the app world and even the stock world or whatever, you're competing versus VCs. And these people have insider deals. They know people. They're going to get it before you. It's a dog eat dog world, and I enjoy it to an extent, but it's exhausting. So I took a step back and I went to where you have to use your own brain, your skills. This isn't a silver platter. This isn't a pre-seed deal handed to you. This isn't a Solana ICO investor, right? This is something where you actually have to see, okay, how does it really have censorship resistance? Which is a big question about a lot of these things. So I see Hive as having censorship resistance, which I speak a lot about, and anyone who wants to know why can read my Hive blog. So now I'm not competing versus the VCs. It's like I'm competing versus my knowledge, myself. Is this thing censorship resistant or not? I don't need to worry about inside deals. I just need to worry about if my calculations, A, is censorship resistance going to be valuable? B, is Hive censorship resistance will be around 10 years. I make it very easy, very practical. That's why I'm very comfortable with Hive, because I think both are correct. When you're talking about why I made 3Speak, really, I want to make apps on top of Hive to make Hive more valuable, to be very blunt. I'm very pro free speech. It's a passion of mine. I always believe in aligning passions with business, because then you're going to work the midnight oil, right? That's why you see Matt, he probably works on Splinterlands overtime all the time, right? Because he loves it. If he didn't love it, if it felt like work, he would do it just enough, just as much as he had to, right? Any human would do that. It's called, you know, job that you don't like. So 3Speak was a passion. Video I saw as I love big problems. I don't know. I love just putting my plate as full as possible and just say, let's just dive in. Give me a very tough problem to solve. I've been a puzzle solver since I was 3 or 4. I think I was beating, you know, teenagers at Mario when I was like 4 or 5. I've always just been a freak at these things. And I love game theory. I don't know why, I just do. I love it. So this was a very hard problem to solve. How to store big data off chain in a truly censorship resistant way in practice, not theory. Because we're there in theory, beat that, that's easy. Doesn't work in practice though. So that's why. So it's not really competing versus YouTube. It was to preserve freedom of speech. But the underlying greed factor, why I did it, right? No one's truly benevolent. I wanted Hive to be more valuable.
Yeah, and I really love what you said about it's you against your own knowledge. Wow, great speech, man. Matt, it really takes me to well, following the investment side. You're a developer, and usually people just create this link in their heads. Oh, he codes blockchain, so he must invest in crypto projects. So I don't even know if you're a crypto investor per se, but I do know that you invest in a lot of Hive projects, in Hive layer 2 projects. I do know that you bought a lot of punks, that you have a lot of stake in the different layer 2s. So are you still investing? And if you are, how do you assess a good token? And if you're not, how did you used to do that?
Yeah, well, so one, I would find that anyone building in this space who doesn't put money into crypto, you know, Bitcoin or whatever, like that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So yeah, I mean, ultimately, but the way I look at it is I save in Bitcoin. Bitcoin is my savings, right? Retirement savings, any type of savings, that's Bitcoin. And then everything else is investment, right? With a lot, you know, and I look at the differences. Savings is like, you're kind of like guaranteed, it's there. That's your least risk thing for when you need it later. Investing is the more risky side. You know, you're trying, you know, a bunch of new things that may or may not work out, but if they do work out, they could be really big. So, you know, typically investing would be a much smaller part of the portfolio than the savings, for me at least. Again, not financial advice. Yeah, and then as far as that investing part, I mean, there's a couple sides. I mean, one, I definitely love to support things that are building on Hive, people that I know are good people, projects that I think are cool or even fun. I mean, there's a lot of things that I just buy because they're fun, not necessarily because I think you know, it'll be a big money maker. I think the Hive Punks falls into that category. Cool project on Hive, a lot of fun, happy to support it. But for things outside of that realm, I don't invest in tons of cryptos. I mean, there's a million out there. I don't have the time to really learn about them, but the few that I do are ones that I personally use a lot, right? And my evaluation for projects is pretty simple. It's like, if there's an actual product or service that people would pay for without expectation of a financial return, that's a potentially viable business right there. So if it's just like a yield farming thing, right, there's no product or service there. It's just everyone going to try to get some financial return, versus something like take Uniswap, which is, you know, people want to swap tokens, right, and they pay a fee for that. They don't expect to get a return on their trade, right? They don't expect to earn yield because they trade. They just needed to trade currencies. I mean, Splinterlands uses Uniswap. I use it personally. Like, you know, you get paid in different things. You need to swap them. So so I'm not saying that's a good investment, but that's like the first level. Like, if there's a product that I use and that is valuable to me, then and it has like a token that is able to capture that value, right? So that's another thing. Like, can their tokenomics actually capture that value? then that's one I'm probably going to go into a lot. So I'll mention, I know Cal would appreciate that Rune and Thorchain is one of those. Like I like to hold, real unwrapped Bitcoin, in my wallet. So when I get other things and I want to get that real unwrapped Bitcoin, I used to have to go through KYC exchanges and, the whole thing. And man, the first time I did a swap and got Bitcoin directly into my wallet, KYC free, totally anonymously through Thorchain, it was kind of a magical experience. And so those are the type of things that I look to invest in.
Yeah, and I think it's all about the product and not the tokenomics. If you have a working product and the tokenomics work, that's great, but the product has to be the main attraction point for that. So Cal, Matt talks about risk assessment, and you mentioned last week that at one point in the last bear market, you were 95% at a loss. How do you deal with the market fluctuations, and how do you manage to get a long-term mindset without getting anxious and desperate about the current state of things whenever there's a bear market? So let's just move the conversation a little bit about all of that.
Yeah, I've like I said, I listen to a lot of different podcasts, and one of them is called the All In podcast, which kind of blew up during COVID, which is a couple of the biggest VCs in TradFi. And one thing that they were talking about is they were telling a lot of founders to create a long runway. So they said, at the height of this bull market in really all assets over the last 2 years, basically take a lot of funds and build out this runway for yourself. So, I really, took that to heart and worked really hard on taking a lot of profits in this last bull run. So, Bitcoin at 50,000 plus, Ethereum at ridiculous highs. I obviously held a lot of those too. I've had an ETH miner for a number of years, and I basically took all my profits from that miner and closed it out. And a lot of opportunity to basically stock away funds in the last bull market. I learned my lesson, like you were saying, in the last bear market, where I think I held the vast majority of my wealth in crypto. So, whether it was Bitcoin or Steam at the time, a lot of my wealth was basically just sitting there. And, it hurt when the bear market came. So I felt that hurt, and I knew that I didn't want to feel it again. So this new market environment that we entered is where, you have stable coins, and you have DeFi, and you have Thorchain, where you can pool native assets, and you have all these different places where you can basically, store crypto and earn, especially in the form of stable coins. And that stuff, really, really hit home to me, that in the bull market, if you could take profits and stock away a bunch of money in those places, you can create almost an infinite runway. Because if you stock away enough to the point where, a 10 to 15% APR on stable coins could basically fund your entire development future, you have an infinite runway. So, I really took that to heart. I started building that out. So I would say that, what keeps me sane in, this bear market that we've now entered, where, it's definitely not as painful as the last one so far, but it could easily become just as painful. I don't know that we're at the bottom, and I think a lot of people agree on that. But, we very well could be, or we very well could not be. So either way, I think the best position to be in is to know that you've got, 3 to 5 plus years of funds, both personally and for whatever you're building. So, if you're founding a project, I hope you have 3 to 5 years of capital to sustain your development and your team. And, if you're just an investor and, you just own crypto, I hope that your lifestyle is not just funded by your crypto portfolio, and you've got, 3 to 5 years of money in the bank or money in stable coins. I think if you don't have those things, your ability to make good decisions really gets affected and impacted, which is why you see a lot of people buy the top and then sell the bottom. And just keeping that runway for yourself is something that I can't stress enough.
Yeah, and I can't even be clear about, like, there are so many projects that currently are struggling to just stay afloat because they didn't plan for this bear market, and they didn't prepare a fund, like 3-5 year fund for your roadmap. So Carl talks about some advice to the founders, to any potential founders that might be listening or that want to start a project. So Dan, what can you tell the future DApp founders when they are building their own product and when they are envisioning their own roadmap? If you were able to just tell them just a couple of advices, the most important ones.
Yeah, Kyle just said you gotta have liquidity is life. It's your lifeblood. And it's funny he said he went down 95%. Yeah, it sounds about true for me too during that 2018. So yeah, it sounded like he held all the way through it as well. Yeah, going around a roller coaster isn't fun. Taking a round trip isn't always fun. So as a founder, you're going to want to make sure you have the funds, and B, you got to make sure that you have the team. You got to make sure you have ride or die. I've been through this. I'm sure every founder has. When times get tough, you might, and you also, if you have somebody super talented, you got to make sure that they're not easily poached. So I believe if you're smart, because there's difference between being a personal investor, right? And what level of risk you want to take, and then a founder. Because like if you're a founder, it's basically like you're a parent, and you got to make sure that you're not just doing what's best for you, but what's doing best for the project, especially if it's a lot of people involved and people are invested in it. So be smart, right? Don't be greedy, take profits. My advice is always, when you feel rich, take some profit. And when you feel poor, make sure you got a side hustle. The one thing I gauge my quality of life on is how much am I a distressed seller? Because if I have to sell crypto right now, it's painful. I don't know if it's the bottom. It just hurts me inside. I don't know, maybe the price didn't go up there and go down. I just, I feel the hurt when I have to sell right now. So I play poker. I'll grind some poker if I need some spending money. You got to humble yourself. Always have some kind of, learn something that you can do at any time to make money. Mine is online poker. I live in Mexico. I can fire this thing up right now, play some tournaments, and grind out some money if I'm lucky. If I play it enough, the luck goes away and it becomes, more of a guarantee. So find you a side hustle, and a ride or die team, and stack away some money. So it's the word of advice for founders.
Awesome. Yeah. Matt, do you want to chip in on that same topic?
I mean, yeah, I guess, to me, I feel like the best things to do if you want to start something is to just do something that you yourself are personally just like so passionate about. I mean, Dan talked about passion earlier. I mean, that to me is everything. I feel like, I was kind of this way in the past, and I've seen a lot of other people this way, that like want to start a business just because they want to start a business and get rich or whatever it is. And like, it is just never going to work if you're just sort of going out trying to find some random thing that just you think might just be a good business. When it works is when there's just something that's like, it's just your thing. And it's all you can think about. And it's just what you want out of life is to make this thing happen. Again, like I was talking about with Splinterlands, like if it's so passionate for you, like there's probably going to be other people in the world, right, that are like you, and those are people that will either be your users, your customers, or even your employees or partners. So that's the main thing that I think is between the success and the failure, is just how like personally passionate you really are about what you're doing.
Yeah. Wow, that was great advice from both. Thanks. Cal, I have a question for you. You are ride or die Leo Finance, and you previously mentioned that you usually work, let's just say 20 hours each day, and then on the weekends you get to rest. But how do you manage to transfer this passion to your employees? Because both of you, both Matt and Dan mentioned that having a good team and being able to find people that work great with you, it's very important. So how do you manage to get your developers to be as passionate as you?
Yeah, you can never really, and I read this in a book somewhere, but I can't remember where it was, but you can never get your you can never really expect your employees to just be kind of clones of yourself. And when it comes to devs or anyone that's working on the project, you can expect a lot out of them, and I think you should as a founder, but you can never really expect the same level of passion that you have. So like Matt was saying, if you build something that scratches your own itch, you're just going to be willing to basically die on your sword for it. So that's really how I feel about Leo Finance and all the stuff that we're doing. For me, finance, like I said, I started trading, when I was young, and finance has always just been this super fascinating thing to me. And, it became really apparent over time that most people have no idea, about finance and how it works. And, whether it's credit cards or trading or, building a stock portfolio or something like Bitcoin, people really have a very small understanding of actual finance. So, what kind of scratched my own itch was that I loved talking about finance. I loved writing articles about finance. I loved, doing finance, any sort of little, kind of like Dan is with poker. I'm sure like if you make 10 cents playing poker, you're probably super excited. And it's just like, it's the money that you make is irrelevant. It's just the fact that you won. So for me, trading is really that way. I love to make any sort of little trade or arbitrage that I can. And I love to talk about it. So, me scratching my own itch really looked like me just going out and, making trades and, finding things like Rune and writing articles about them and talking to people in the comments. So what I expect out of the team is, just to build and be there. And, some people are really focused on the vision that you have and they buy into that vision. Other people aren't. So throughout this, kind of bull bear cycle that we've had the last, like 4 years now, where we rode up to all-time highs, and now we're obviously not at the highs. I've had, a lot of different team members come and go. We lost one of our biggest developers a few months back, and that really struck us hard. But you find replacements, you find people who are better suited. I think if you stick on the mission and you believe in it, you're able to kind of get other people to buy into it and develop for you. So you just got to stay resilient.
Resilient. Yeah. And I think Dan knows a lot about, first resilience and then balance. Dan, you have your own family and you have like your own personal life. How do you manage to keep a balance, and how long did it take you to find a true balance and a healthy lifestyle without neglecting neither your projects or your family? Can you tell the audience some tips about that?
Mm-hmm. So I think it's very first important to be completely honest, first with yourself, then with your partner and family. With yourself, what do you want out of life? What do you want out of life? What are you willing to do every day, right? Do what you're doing today, because a lot of people be like, oh, I'm just going to put up with it. No. You can only put up with it for so long, and then you're really in a shithole. What do you want out of life? What do you want to do? How much time is that going to take? Realistically, how much time are you willing to shave off for others? Because you have to come from a completely greedy. First, you have to come from the mindset, I'm completely greedy. It's all about me. No one else exists. What do I want to do? Get that out of the way, because it exists. No one's benevolent. Don't try to act like you are. Everyone needs what they want out of life. Once you find that, you parameter it. What do I do? What do I mean? I have parameters. I talk to my wife and I say, okay, how much time do we realistically need? Because I'm very blunt, very honest and open. It's like, let's just talk. How much time do we need to see each other each week, right? And then we'll say, okay, we'll do this day. We'll have family day here. We'll have, date night here, and we'll do this day here. And then, sprinkle in some dinners, some randomness to keep it alive. But now it's like, okay, I can go really hard on my passion now. It always reminds me of that scene from Rocky when his wife was in a coma and he couldn't really train or do anything. Well, that's how I feel if I feel like I'm neglecting my family. I feel like, if my kids or my wife, if I feel like I'm not giving them enough, how can I really go hard and be my true self? So as long as you're honest with whoever you're with and you say, look, this is what I need, take it or leave it. I'm not bending, I'm not changing. This is what it is. You tell me what yours is. And if it works, then we move forward. And as long as everyone's happy and honest, then you can live a good life. So that'd be the advice I'd give there.
Yeah, one of the best advices I ever got was, if you're ever planning on marrying or getting together with someone, find a partner that shares your passions, or at least understands your passions and is willing to get on board with what you want to achieve, and it's willing to support you. So yeah, definitely. Matt, do you want to chip in on this? I think this is a very great question for anyone listening to us.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, obviously you're passionate about something, you want to do it as much as possible, but there's also still like too much of anything, I think. I was definitely in that situation like a year ago, roughly, trying to do everything and anything, and it was just way too much. It was just bad for my health also. Like health is super important, you know, especially if you want to be at the top of your game for whatever you're doing and what you're passionate about. And so my health definitely really suffered, and ultimately, you know, we brought on a lot of other people, you know, who are similarly passionate about what we're doing. So we have a lot. So, you know, I don't even do any actual coding anymore for Splinterlands. Like we have a new CTO, and I'm the chief product officer now. So we have people who are really good running our technology department and our servers and all that stuff. And that's awesome for me for two reasons. I mean, because one, you know, I have more time to take care of myself, spend with my family, which is, you know, I'm equally passionate about as to Splinterlands. And two, I get to really focus even more on just the things I really like doing, like building the product, designing the product, and, you know, working with our customers to just make the coolest thing ever. So yeah, I mean, I think it's super important not to get lost in your passion. Make sure you take care of yourself and the people that are important to you. And a great way to do that is to get other people, you know, working with you who are good and share the same passion.
Yeah, it's all about passion. And I think that this is going to be a good question. Cal, if your passion wasn't finance or building up this whole ecosystem, and it would be something completely different, what would Cal be?
That's a great question. You know, I'm finance has really wrapped up my entire life in terms of when I was young, it became, you know, the only real thing I could think about, you know, whether it was stocks or crypto. But then, you know, I did start to develop like some other hobbies, like, you know, reading and writing. And, you know, I love cars. So, you know, I would say if I wasn't doing all this, you know, like business operator, investing, you know, my own capital in different projects and crypto, and I still, you know, trade on the stock market with options. If I wasn't doing all of that, I would say I probably would be some sort of writer, you know, writing for whatever. You know, when I found Steam back in the day, I was obsessed with writing and you know, earning was fun too. And I started getting into that part of it, but really writing was just kind of this thing that I love doing. So I'd probably be some, you know, patch on the vest type of writer.
Nice. And I do want to know about your answer, Dan and Matt.
Okay.
Dan, what about you? What would Dan be if he wasn't an entrepreneur, that founder, and poker and crypto connoisseur?
Oh no, you took poker away. Yeah, I mean, I'd create content. I'd write. I really like philosophy. I really love deep thinking. I listen to motivational and just people who speak about various topics about life all the time. So I'd be highly into that. But God knows, thankful for crypto. Who knows where I'd be? I've done a lot of things in life. So, well, you know, I would write. If money wasn't a thing, if it wasn't about money, and I'll say that. If it wasn't about money, then I'd definitely be a writer and make content.
Nice. Matt, this is a double-sided question. The first is, what would Matt be? Matt has to go. So, Matt, can you close this with, can you give us some mysterious or some unknown fact about Splinterlands, or something that you have planned in the future and that you are willing and able to disclose for the audience? Like, what's in store for Splinterlands? Get us hyped.
I'll start with the first thing. I mean, I feel like I would always be in a gamer or in the gaming industry in some way if I wasn't doing what I was doing. You know, even if it was just sitting around playing games, you know, all the time. So that's mostly what I'd be doing if I wasn't building Splinterlands. I don't know if there's an interesting thing that most people don't know. And as far as the future, you know, I can't reveal anything here that we haven't, you know, publicly revealed. But I think one of the things, like, people focus a lot on, you know, what features we have coming out, right? New cards, new expansions, new gameplay things. But what people, you know, don't focus on as much, which I think is ultimately more important, and, you know, what Dan was talking about earlier is, you know, how can we really decentralize this whole thing in practice? And that is the real goal that we're working towards with our validator node project, is to get, you know, also, you know, Dan had talked about his goal is that, like, no one really cares about, like, him anymore. Like, he's not important as far as this project. I want that to be the same way for me with Splinterlands. Like, the fact that I feel like I'm so important for the project right now means that it's you know, too centralized, and it needs to get to a point where not only me but our entire company, you know, is not at all important for the future of the project. So, you know, it'd be able to be run independently anywhere by anyone, and just like Hive, there's no person, there's no entity, there's no company that's, like, important as far as, like, if that were to go away, that Hive would die or something, right? And so what we're trying to do, and what I think is one of the most important things for what we're doing and why we're here, is that. And it's super cool, and I look forward to hopefully being the first game that can achieve that.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Matt. It was amazing to have you here, and thanks for sharing all this founder knowledge, letting the audience grind a little bit in the experience side of things. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Matt. It was great having you on again. I haven't talked to you in a while face to face.
Yeah, anytime. It was great talking to all of you. Appreciate it. And you know, I'll see you around on the blockchain.
See you, man.
See it.
Dan, we still have a few like 20 minutes, and I do want to know something about Speak Network. So Matt was speaking about decentralization and centralization, and how important it is to not be important for the project when it is decentralized. So what I want to do, to ask you is, when will it be the time for Hive to, like, well, I'm gonna rephrase. If you were the CEO of Hive, like right now, there's no leadership per se, like no named leadership. So if you just woke up tomorrow and you were the CEO, what is the first thing you would do? And how would you steer the wheel so that in 3 years we were where you want it to be?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing I would do is try to resign as CEO of Hive. But if that wasn't possible, then I would. I mean, that's the thing. That's the funny thing about Hive, because every time I think I want to change something, it gets a lot of stuff right, and nothing's perfect. So if you can accept the flaws and then the strengths are just ridiculous, that's where I look. but if I was a CEO of Hive, I think there should be more focus. And I think the community, like, I guess I could snap fingers and say, let's get a proposal up to do decentralized exchange. Really what Cal and Leo Finance have been focusing on. I think having a native DEX for Hive is so important. And we're very, very vulnerable right now to a liquidity attack. Speak Network hopes to help with that. You hear that Matt over there, Splinterlands, they're trying to build open source node systems with their validator systems, going to be open source. So that's always great. I'm a fan of that. So, you know, hopefully base communities can start to fork those away and modify it and do whatever they can to improve it. But yeah, I think the focus should be get a decentralized exchange on Hive that's native to Hive, and give it all the features of a Uniswap. Of course, this is going to need some smart contracts. So yeah, that would be my main focus if I had to pick one thing. I think that's one of the biggest attack vectors to Hive right now.
Okay, yeah, it is, well, at least interesting what you mentioned. And so Cal, I think that this question it's not the same for you, because anything that you would like to see on Hive that is not getting developed or that is not getting enough attention, you have Leo to develop it, and you have Leo to test it and to say, hey, this works or this is needed. Maybe Hive should implement it at a top level, or maybe I can provide that answer to this problem or to this question. So do you want to add something to what Dan said?
Yeah. I actually put out a tweet from the Leo Finance account. I think it was about a week ago, talking about this attack vector. Like Dan was saying, where we've got basically almost 99% of liquidity for Hive and trading volume is happening on centralized exchanges. And namely, the vast majority of that is happening on Binance. And, obviously if you're on Hive, you know that we had the hard fork 26, about 2 weeks ago. And ever since then, deposits and withdrawals on Binance have been offline. So you see a lot of people making posts and comments on Hive talking about how they're unable to basically take money out of Hive or put money into Hive. I know someone came into Discord the other day and was asking how they can get, they had a friend that had Bitcoin that wanted Hive, and they didn't know how to help them get Hive because, Binance was offline and that would be their normal route. So this is a major attack vector for Hive. And, I really see Hive as one of the, top 10 or even top 5 most decentralized blockchains in the space. But that being said, I think our liquidity is extremely centralized. It's centrally located basically in 1 or 2 or 3 exchanges. So like Dan said, I think a huge benefit to Hive would be if we had a natural base layer decentralized exchange where you could trade Hive for other assets. So right now you have that with the internal market. You can trade Hive and HBD, but that doesn't create an on-ramp or an off-ramp if you want to move funds to and from other chains or other assets, because you can basically just trade between Hive and HBD, which is still a great thing, but it's not everything we need. We need to be able to on-ramp and off-ramp liquidity. So I definitely think and believe that one day we'll have a base layer decentralized exchange for trading Hive and other assets. And I think that's a great thing. I think a lot of people would probably think that I wouldn't want that, because that kind of directly competes with, the stuff that Leo Finance is doing with CUB and PolyCUB to try to build derivatives. But I actually firmly want that. If I could snap my fingers and have that tomorrow, I would love to have that for Hive, a decentralized base layer exchange. The way I see it is that, like Dan said, 3Speak is doing a lot of stuff, and other apps, even like Splinterlands, are doing things to decentralize that liquidity and the pools of capital. So I see derivatives, like what the stuff that we're doing, where it's not native and on the base layer. It's built on another blockchain, but it interacts. Excuse me. It interacts with the native base layer. I see that as having a great benefit to decentralizing that liquidity as well. Building a native DEX on chain is a great thing. We definitely need it, but I also believe that derivatives have a great deal of value. And look at TradFi, and you'll see trillions of dollars worth of derivatives. And there's a very good reason for that.
Yeah, and the more projects on Hive get built, the better, right? But I do have I do want to know your take on, there are so many games getting built on top of Hive, like CyberX or Rising Star, D-Crops, like I don't remember anymore, but so what's the difference between being a Hive content creator or a Hive user that wants to create a dApp, and what's the difference between a, let's just call it serial founder? Dan, what makes a dApp founder different than the others? Like, if you could tell the audience, I think this overlaps with one of the questions I already asked, but how can they differentiate their product to be successful?
Are you talking about an app versus a dApp, if I'm getting the question correctly?
Pretty much like what makes, let's just say, what made Wombat be so successful with hundreds of thousands of users against, let's just say, one of the dead Hive projects, like one of the games that died on Hive. Like, what could you tell founders to do correctly in terms of building on Hive?
Yeah, the first thing I would look, if you're talking about a game, is you're going to want to look to Splinterlands as your blueprint. They're really, so you can say they started off very small, heavy control, but now you're seeing them grow out. And I firmly believe that it's much easier for a layer 2 to start centralized and become decentralized if they're built on top of a truly censorship resistant base layer. The base layer is very difficult if it stays centralized for too long. Of course, there's a birthing period, but after that, there's 2 tracks you can take, and most of them take the wrong foot. And after that, it becomes almost impossible to recover. But I don't think that's the case for layer 2. I think it's almost quite the opposite. So I would say, I can only speak from my approach. I really don't want to have that much responsibility and feel like the father of these applications. I, from the start, am trying to relinquish as much power, put in as much as needed to get it going, to be something that people can rally around. And that's why I went with the claim drop, the airdrops, with pretty much everything I'm going to build. That's going to be the case, because what happened? Well, we were trying to build this app, and we so happened to needed a new layer 2 tech, which we needed validator nodes. Well, since we incentivized the entire censorship resistant community on Hive, we had like 60 plus. And we've been working with blockchains, and one of their main issues is validators, because you can't go buy these guys at Walmart. And if you point them in a centralized way, it's a civil attack by definition. And it makes you centralized, and they're worried about security and all this things, because you can't pay these people under the table. You got to pay them, and you got to say why. So like, because a lot of these people are by the book, right? So like, you can't go pay in 20 validators out of your ICO funds and call yourselves. So it becomes a very big problem. And I think it's one that Hive we just stun on people. We take it for, some people take it for granted. I don't, but I think a lot of people are just overlook the fact that we have so many fucking validators that are just here, and you can just incentivize them and pop up a layer 2 foundation, and they do a lot of the work, right? A lot of the it's a decentralized project. So I've always looked at it from that way. Be humble. How much can you give to the community? How much do you want to responsibility do you want to take? What's your goal, right? Like, there's some people who have a passion, right? Like, you can say Splinterlands, Matt, he loves Splinterlands. He wants to build that out, and good. That's good. I don't necessarily have that kind of passion. My passion is to make Hive be more valuable. So I want to build as many apps as possible and get them spun up and community driven so they don't have to worry about me anymore, right? And just rinse and repeat. So I wouldn't take my advice if I was to be someone like maybe a Kyle or a Matt. I would take my advice if I'm somebody like you could say like a Joe Lubin on Ethereum. I'm like a bootleg Joe Lubin on Hive, like, a knockoff version. Dude's a billionaire, obviously. I didn't have the privilege of an ICO though. So I guess I could say I'm the real version of what he's trying to be over there on Ethereum. So that's sort of my mindset.
Yeah, and I do think that, okay, so back in the Steam days, many people were just trying to start projects thinking, okay, I have to give something back to the community, and in return, I will get votes. Like there wasn't a lot of room to move around regarding funding. So if you have a good idea, post about it and continuously update about it, and you will get votes, and then you will be able to fund your project or to live off of your posts. Well, like that was the mentality. Now we have so many options. Like we have the DHF. We have like, for example, Mark did some like he did the NFT collections, the punk collection, and he just got a lot of funding from that. So there are a lot of ways for Hive users to start a business or to start a DApp. And one of the things that many people say is that if you are not not a big name on the community, then you won't get funded or you won't get support. And I don't think that's really true. Of course, you have to have a working product and you have to have a good idea and give back to the community. But I have seen so many people just support a project because they have good tokenomics and they have good foundations, and they just get all like the first round gets all sell out. So I don't think that's a problem. If you want to start a project on Hive, you can actually do it, and it's not going to be as hard as some other blockchain because you have the community power here, and you have a way of communicating to the community what you want to develop. So if this trend continues, then how do you see Hive in 10 years? Like if all goes according to plan?
Yeah, I look at the DHF as a very, very simplistic version 1 of what it's going to become. It's basically a faucet that you turn on and off. From there, you're going to need to build the plumbing, the sinks, and all of that. We're not at the sink. We just have a hole in the ground that water can come out when we turn it on and off. That's how it's very primitive to what it could be. So you're going to, I mean, in 10 years with this sort of funding, just to quickly comment on coming here and trying to get funding. First of all, we're a bunch of cave people. No matter how smart we think we are, we're just banging rocks together, hoping for fire. This technology is going to be much, much bigger and done various different ways that we can't even comprehend right now. So you're trying to come here and get funding from a bunch of cave people, right? You're like, turn the faucet on for me. We're like, well, who the hell are you? It's reputation based. We're still primitive. So it's like, who are you? You got to prove you're not a scammer or who you are. So you can't just come here without reputation. And reputation is the stairs up and the elevator down. It's very difficult to accumulate, just what it is. It's not easy. And rightfully so. We got to protect our water pump. We can't just turn it on for anybody. So I'd much rather err on the side of caution in the early days than vice versa. And I think, if anything, we've been pretty balanced, like reserved, but we're heating up, and it's definitely not impossible to get funding. And tribalism does not play that big of a factor. Like, yeah, sure, if you go piss off a lot of large stakeholders, it's not going to help your cause. But at the end of the day, if enough people like you, they're going to get in, right? Like people say, oh, you need, maybe block trades, or you need the top 2 or 3 votes. It's like, well, there's funding where we're not voting on. They're still getting funded. So there's definitely enough distribution in the stake if you're there. And another thing is, don't take it personally. It's robotic. There's no offense. There's no ego here. If you put up submissive and nobody likes it or give you criticism, take the criticism, take the emotion out of it, see if you can actually practically improve your idea, and then resubmit and keep resubmitting until you can. If the fees become too much, then, resubmit more strategically. That's just what it is. It's just a source of funding. You can't be egotistical about it. Oh, I didn't get funding, I'm never going to do this or that. That's definitely not the way. And what happens is investors are like, man, he went funding, didn't get it, still building, still around. This is his second proposal, kind of sad, but he's here and he's trucking along. He's building reputation. Maybe I'm not going to vote this time, but maybe the third time I see that damn thing, the guy's still around. Look at the progress, look at the update. I'm going to throw him a vote. So how many times you throw your hat in the ring? As far as 10 years, I'll say quickly, I think you're going to have layers and layers on top of this DAO. You're going to have committees upon committees. You're going to have all kinds of crazy little government-esque feeling things to take this. And Paradox Trust, he's a professor over at Oklahoma State. He's really thinking about this deeply. He has a good mind for this. So I really want to game theory with him as much as possible about how to build layer 2s on top of the DAO. The DAO is the layer 1 faucet. Time to build layer 2s on top of this faucet. Speak Networks built a primitive version. It's like Upwork, where you can submit a bid and people commit. So the community is like, we want decentralized exchange. And then you have all these Hive devs like, I can do it. This price, this price, this price. And it's like, oh, well, we'll go with this guy because he has this price and we trust him. And it was like, oh, well, no, I'm going to underbid him. So now they're competing, lowering the cost. And then eventually the community can pick what they want. And this guy gets the funding or person. So that's the idea of a very primitive layer 2 version. But man, you can really think of where this could come with organization. The smart
We are all
contracts.
just cavemen. Yeah. Wow. Pretty interesting. Kyle, where do you see Hive in 10 years? And maybe it's just about adding to what Dan say, or maybe you have a different vision for this.
Yeah, I think Dan and I have a similar vision of where Hive is headed. I think most of us have a pretty aligned vision, which is, one of the great things about Hive is that, we're so decentralized. We're all from, different parts of the world. And that being said, we all kind of share this cohesive vision of the future. We may have different visions of some of the details, but in a broad sense, we all kind of see this expanding. My vision of Hive in 10 years is that we've got, thousands of applications and, people that are building them that are extremely talented. You look at something like Ethereum or, BSC or even Solana, and you see a lot of talented business owners and app developers going there and building stuff. And I think Hive is underrated in that aspect where, there's a lot more potentially for them to come in here and build something. I do think it's a matter of time before you see a lot more talent flock this blockchain. So over the next 10 years, I think you'll just kind of see what we've been seeing, which is just kind of a slow and steady expansion of the apps that are on here. And, you're going to see a lot of apps fail. You're going to see a lot of apps just kind of wither away into nothing. But at the same time, you're going to see a lot of apps flourish. So you're going to see, the Splinterlands of the world emerge. And as you see those, it's only going to attract more and more apps. And, you have that constant push and pull of apps that are failing and apps that are succeeding. So, the key is really not to get, not to get too romantic about the idea of, every app needs to succeed. Everything needs to be successful all the time. Failure is an iteration towards success. So, I believe a lot in the way that the DAO is set up. And, some of the recent changes with HBD have made me even more bullish on the DAO. And if you want to know why, just go look at some posts on chain, at DALZ, DALZ, does a lot of analysis on HBD and the DAO and basically the funds that are moving around on the ecosystem. And, I'm really bullish on what's happening there financially. And then if you add in that aspect that it is a fully decentralized way for projects to come in and get funding, that just supercharges it. So, I really think it's just a matter of time before you see kind of the next Splinterlands emerge. And as you get a couple of those, like let's say that 10 years from now, there's 10 projects like Splinterlands at that scale of, like Matt was saying, millions of transactions per day on the Hive blockchain. My vision of Hive is that resource credits get extremely expensive. People need to power up a shit ton of Hive. And the price radically increases. I think right now you have Hive in the hands of a lot of users and people that create content and stuff like that. I think in the future, a lot of that hive is actually going to flow into the hands of projects. So we're kind of in this multi-stage setup of, in the early days, you had a lot of people that earned a ton of hive from blogging and stuff like that. And as time goes on, the holders of hive kind of evolve from, just the average user holding, 100,000 hive or 1 million hive to, the average user maybe having a little bit of hive, but then the projects are going to be holding hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions of hive because they need it. So, a project like Splinterlands, they keep acquiring hive because those resource credits, they have a continuing need for them. And it's only going to take one competing project. So if you look at a hive block, I think like 95% of that block contains Splinterlands data. What happens when you get one more project that starts competing with Splinterlands for all that block space? The cost of transacting on chain is going to go up. And that might sound like a bad thing, but economically speaking, that is a fantastic thing.
Yeah, and it doesn't really matter for the users if they don't have hive, because the projects will have to acquire hive to allow them to interact with the blockchain. Yeah. Wow, this was amazing. I'm learning so much. I can't even tell what the audience will feel about listening to this. Dan, for the last question, and Carl already mentioned something about this the last roundtable, but and it's just a fun question. So how does the day of Dan looks like your average day?
Average day. Well,
As a founder, but also as a person.
I usually wake up before anyone else. I know I've slept in when my little toddler comes running in, shaking some kind of loud toy. So that'll wake me up. So that's where me and my family stay. I had to move my office to another location, about 4-minute drive, because when you have kids, you'll understand. If you don't, you might have kids, but yeah, they're very loud. Don't really let you get any work, especially if they know where you are. If you try to hide from them in another room, they just want to get in it more. So yeah, I come to my office. I live on lovely coast of Mexico. I have a very beautiful scene right here, but I don't really want to dox my location. But nice, nice office to myself. I usually come here 4 or 5 times a week, early in the morning, and I go back almost feels like a 9 to 5, right? Constantly trying to innovate on hive. Hive is my biggest focus right now during this bear market. Lots of projects, lots of roadmaps, and just trying to think of ways to expand awareness, the philosophy. We've been working with Trust a lot in OKU, Oklahoma. Got another talk in Seattle coming up. We need to get some hivers out there, but just trying to just inject hive anywhere I possibly can. So that's really been my daily focus. And then, yeah, I'll go home, play with the kids, usually go out to dinner, a couple times a week. Yeah, just pretty simple life, the work balance, work out a couple times a week. Yeah, good life. Can't complain.
Yeah, I actually want just like 2 months ago, I realized I am working from home, and I just told my girlfriend, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to rent something like in the corner, but I do need like my own space. Otherwise, I get distracted too much. And if it's not because of you are coming, it's because I see the bed in the next room and I want to go there, or I want to like just. Yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying, and it's great that just 4 minutes away, you are still close to the family. Carl, you already replied to this question before, but do you want to add something? Like, did something changed in 2 weeks?
No, my routine is I'm a huge creature of habit. I pretty much eat the same food every day, do the same thing every day. I super creature of habit. Lucky and unlucky that I don't really have much of a life outside of this stuff right now. I'm still able to just kind of sit here and grind and not have anyone to answer to really, which is a double-edged sword, But yeah, I love Hive. I love building on here. I think, sometimes people misconstrue the whole thing about building out on other chains as being negative on Hive. But no, it's, Hive is always the base layer. Hive is always going to be at the core of what we do. I've said this multiple times on all the podcasts we've done, but Hive is the best technology out there in the blockchain space. And I think the decentralization of Hive actually comes close to or potentially even rivals that of Bitcoin. And I think, building on here every day is just kind of a lucky thing. Like Dan said, if it wasn't for crypto, I don't know where I would be. And kind of, taking that even more into the long tail. If it wasn't for Hive, I don't know where I'd be. I don't know what I would be doing, but I definitely love building in this space.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I've been here for 5 years, and I can't really fathom what I would be doing if I wasn't it's daily hiving, Dan, thanks so much for being here. It was amazing to finally get to have this. It was truly inspirational hearing you guys. I just get so bullish whenever I just hear people who know so much and people who are who see the matrix, because I just see parts here and parts here, but it seems like you guys have it all not figured out, because nobody does, but just sharing your vision with the normal people and with the audience that hopefully will listen us in the future when this series gets 100,000 views every day. But yeah, thanks for being here, Dan. Thanks, Cal.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. It was great talking to you. And I have a selfish ask. I miss your videos. I miss your 30-minute rants. They're awesome.
Yeah, I have some in the backlog. I'm bad at not uploading them, but appreciate the kick in the ass. I'll get to it. But thanks for having me on anytime, man. You guys are awesome.
Thanks.
Awesome. See you guys.
See ya.